huge amount of information you need to memorize. It is just simple that we learn to walk across the room. Jesus said in Matthew 5:13 or 14, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden." Now, Bill Hybels, he was motivated by a story, something that happened to him. Pastor Bill, who's the author of the book, Walk Across the Room, that we're going to be studying. But what happened, Bill was down in the south at a city at this seminar, and he was in this motel. They had a large banquet hall, and they were all sitting around tables, and they say, "Hey," as they started, "introduce yourself to everyone in the table." You've done that before. And right across from him was a very large African-American man. They went around the circle, and he gave like a Muslim name, and he thought to himself, this guy is Muslim. He looked like a linebacker. But they went around, and then this linebacker smiles at Bill, this Bill Hybels, smiles at him, and says, "I love your books." That confused him. He says, "Are you talking to somebody else?" He actually turned around, and he goes, "Me?" And he says, "Yeah, you. Let's talk. Let's just talk in a few minutes, maybe after lunch or something." And so after the lunch, they get together to talk, and they start to talk, and he says, "Let me tell you a story. What happened? You heard my name, and I'm sure you assumed that I am a Muslim." And he says, "Let me just tell you, in this kind of work, it's been hard for me living in the South as a Muslim man." He says, "I would go, there's a lot of cocktail parties and evening meetings, and I would go, and it would be uncomfortable, but I would go, I'd try to make business contacts, and I would always go over and get my drink and maybe some hors d'oeuvres or something like that. And I would go up and I would make a few contacts. But after a while, I'd notice that I always find myself alone. Somewhere in the room, I'd sit alone. And this would happen time and time again. And then I would feel, I've been around enough. And I would say, I've been here long enough. And I'd graciously leave." He said, "That has been what I've been doing, all these events. Until one day, Bill. One day, same thing was happening. I walk into the room. I walk into this room, and sure enough, I make a few contacts. I get contact, and I get my food. I get my drink, and I'm I'm just all by myself. People are making conversation. People are laughing. You ever been there? He's all alone. And then he says he noticed that one of these young men actually turns and notices him. And that surprised him. And then what happened just shocked him, because this man excused himself from his circle where he was, and he actually makes his way over to him and puts out his hand. He puts out his hand and shakes my hand, introduced himself. I introduced myself, and we just started, and the conversation was just natural. It was easy, and we talked about mutual professions. We talked about friends and family and education, and we talked about sports, and we just had a great conversation. And then finally the conversation moved to faith. And he says, "I was a little reluctant because I'm a Muslim. And I was a little reluctant, but I said, I'm going to take a shot." So he says, I'm Muslim. And the guy says, "Well, I'm a Christ follower, but if truth be told," he says, "I don't know hardly anything about Islam, the Muslim religion. Would you be so kind to, maybe we can get together for breakfast, and you can give the cliff notes of why you're a follower of Islam and why you committed your life to that." And he couldn't believe it. He was just shocked by this. And so what they did, they set up a time. The next week they got together for breakfast. And you can imagine, here's this Muslim, large African-American man with his Christ follower, and they're there in a restaurant for breakfast, and they're sharing. He said it was so natural, Bill. He says we were just sharing back and forth, and he was asking questions about Islam, and I was free to give the answer. And the whole time, this went on week after week. We'd get together the next week, and the next week, a month, 2 months, 3 months. We had all this time. We're building a friendship. We're getting connected. But after about 3 months or so, I realized something, Bill. I realized that he had been asking me questions. And he had been listening the whole time about my faith. But never once did I ask him about his faith. He said to Bill, now Bill, I was raised around the church. My early years. Went to church. My family went to church. But I lived in the deep south. And prejudice came even into the church, and we found we weren't wanted in the church. And so we left the church, and so my whole adult life, I've been a Muslim. But he asked this guy, he says, you know, it's been a long time. I was raised around Christianity. Why don't you just give me a little bit? Tell me again what Christianity is all about. Why you're a Christ follower. And this guy said, respectfully, sensitively, he just shared about Christianity. And more months went by. And to make a long story short, he said to Bill, Bill, I committed my life to Jesus because I saw it was a superior faith religion. And I gave my life to Christ. And I tell you, Bill, it changed everything in my life. It changed my family. Everything's been changed by that one moment when that one Christ follower stepped across the room and stuck out his hand. My life has been changed. Stepping across the room. And Bill Hybels, when he heard that story, he was so touched by this story. And imagine hearing this from a guy that used to be a Muslim. Now he's a Christian. Bill Hybels goes back and he sits down one day and he's just moved by this. And he says, could it be that simple? Could it really be that simple by the prompting of the Spirit that we would actually take these steps across the room and make connection with people that are far from God? And so we wrote this book, Walk Across the Room. That's what we're going to be studying together, this personal evangelism. There are two things that give me more joy, more satisfaction, more fulfillment than anything else in this world. Number one, I love to serve. I love to help people in need. Anybody like to serve? How many's actually been overseas in some mission trip? Some of the greatest experiences are when you're given to people, when you see people in third world and their condition. Man, there's something about that. It just stumped into your heart. And we know that we follow Christ, who was a servant to man. And so we as a church, we want to be about service. We're even considering a mission trip for our church right now, because we believe in service. In just a few weeks, we're going to do this Blue Jean Sabbath again. We're going to go out and serve in our community, because we believe we need to be serving. I love to serve. I love to give. I love to help. It's one of my great joys in my life. I wish I could do it all day long, every day. Just out helping people, maybe help build or give or something. It's a joy. But the second thing in my life that I love is absolute love, when God's Spirit uses me in some way to point somebody to Jesus in some way, to share the gospel with people in some way. I found there's nothing like it in my life. It doesn't compare with monetary gain or possessions or accolades or pleasure or fun. It is when the Spirit of God kind of orchestrates a moment, and the Spirit of God comes upon and impresses you, does something, prompts you, moves you somehow, and you're in this situation, and God's Spirit gives you an opportunity to share about Jesus and point people to Christ. There is no greater joy in my life than those moments, and I've had many in my life. I've had many, and I got to tell you, I think I mentioned this before, but my wife and I were on our 20-year wedding anniversary. I can't believe that was 10 years ago. Jeez, I'm getting old. But we were over, we went to Rome. We went to a Western Mediterranean, a 10-day cruise, the Western Mediterranean. We flew into Rome. We stayed in Rome for a while. We saw the Colosseum, the Forum, all those amazing things, St. Peter's Cathedral. We saw Michelangelo's paintings. I mean, it was just awesome. It was incredible. We went on the cruise. We went to Florence. We went to Venice. We spent a couple days in Venice. We had this amazing experience. And then 10 days, we saw Monte Carlo, Leaning Tower of Pisa. We saw all these places, Barcelona. Does that sound good? And we gained a pound a day on the cruise ship. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding really bad. Anyway, we had a great time. It was amazing what we saw. I love Rome. If you've never been to Rome, you got to go to Rome. Okay, there's so much church history there. It was incredible. But I'll tell you, you want to hear the highlight? It wasn't the sights, not what I saw. It was great being with my wife, but there was a moment my wife and I had. We were in the train. And by the way, we're there, and you will understand this, but the trains are fast and they're smooth, man. They're just amazing. Over 100 miles an hour, we were going from Florence to Venice. And we were sitting, you know, you're always assigned seats, and we were sitting across from a young couple there for hours. We were sitting together, and so we made conversation, and we found out they were Catholics from Boston. And they were there, and they had come all the way over, young couple, and they had gone to the Vatican, and they just wanted to go to the Vatican, and, you know, that's kind of the roots of Catholicism. And I said to them, man, that must have just been awesome and exciting for you as Catholics to go back to the roots and see this amazing building and all of that. And they looked at each other. I could tell something was wrong. And they said, well, be honest, we were upset. Because why would a church be charging people to come into church? By the way, it was $15 a head back then, and people were lined up for a half a mile. I never said it, and you know, that opened up a whole conversation for hours together about the gospel of Jesus. That it's not of works, it's by grace. And Steph was there, and we shared the gospel basically with them. And at the end of that time together, God set up this moment, there's no doubt, God set up the moment, and they actually gave their life to Jesus Christ in the chain on the way to Venice. And those moments, to me, those moments stand out. If I look back, I can tell you, when you're a follower of Jesus Christ, fully devoted, filled with the Spirit, God wants to actually orchestrate events that you will step into these places, the unknown places, and you will become the salt of the earth. The single greatest gift as fathers can give is to the people around them, is to an introduction to the God who created them, who loves them, who died on the cross for them, has purpose for their life. There is nothing like it. And so we go to these places of the unknown. This is what evangelism is. It is constantly looking for opportunities to give away this greatest gift that we have. If you are a follower of Jesus, do you love Jesus? Does Jesus live in you? If Christ is in you, you have the gift of Jesus to give to the world. I have this gift to give to a world out there. And Bend, Oregon needs Jesus. They need the gift of Christ. And God wants to work on you. In this series, God's Spirit wants to take you and make you into a walk across the room kind of follower of Jesus. And so if you want to be that kind of follower of Jesus, the first thing that needs to happen is you need to be willing to enter the zone of the unknown. That's a little scary, isn't it? Ever been there? Ever been there? God opens up opportunity for you to actually share with somebody. It's a little scary. And so here's this circle, we'll call it the circle of comfort. That's this conversational circle of comfort. It's where we like to be. It's easy to relate. It's people that kind of look like us. We're kind of like each other. And so we like to be there. We know there's no threat. It's not unsafe. And so that's where we like to be. But people that are led by the Spirit, when you're in that conversational circle of comfort, God's Spirit, you will look across and God's prompting, God will press you that there is somebody that He wants you to make some connection with. You ever been there? Come on now. This happens. Every day you're looking for it, it happens. And the Spirit of God, and you will take that walk. It may be a few steps. It may be across a street. It's across a room. It's across an office building. But you take these steps because God's Spirit is impressing you to take the steps. It's not easy. It's kind of risky at times. But I'll tell you something. If I can take steps across the room, I know you can. Anybody shy introvert? I'm shy introvert. I am so opposite of my wife. It's unbelievable. Anybody been around Stephanie? What would we call Stephanie? We would call her a what? Extrovert. Okay, she's saying an extrovert. I am actually the opposite of that. Okay? I like being away, and when God called me to ministry, it made me mad. Because I like to be in my little self, you know? That's what I like to be. I'm an introvert. People don't really believe this today. When people found out that I grew up, that I was going into ministry, they actually laughed at me. That's how shy. I didn't talk to people. I didn't do those kind of things. And so here I am, born again of the Spirit. God leads me to La Sierra University. There's 2,000 kids. I show up there, and I'm kind of angry in the back of my mind. I'm trying to follow God's leading in my spirit. I have this powerful call in my life. But I was angry because God was calling me this thing that was getting me out of my comfort zone. I like the circle, man. I like to be in my little comfort circle, my little protection. And what happened is I began to grow in the Lord, and all this was happening. You got to realize this is 5 months later after I gave my life to Christ. I'm going to school to become a pastor. And then it hit me as I'm going to the cafeteria. And every cafeteria, you know, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 kids would show up at different times to eat. And the Spirit of God begins to prompt me, to speak to me, and says, this is going to be your mission field. You got to realize, your mission field. You ever talk to your peers? They're hard to talk to. And I get there, but you got to realize I was so born again. I was so changed by the power and the Spirit of God. That I get there, and I'm telling you, everyone, I'm with Christ. I'm connecting with Jesus, and every day. And I'm realizing that the majority of those kids that were raised, Seventh-day Adventist Christians, were not born of the Spirit. They didn't know Jesus. And I realized I had a mission field to Adventist kids. And I began every morning as I'd get up with God, and then I got up every day at 4:30 in the morning. Try that sometime. Your spiritual walk will start to just go when you give God time. But I go there, and I would go to the cafeteria, and here I am, the shy, introverted person, and God is pushing me out of my little circle, my little comfort zone, and I'd be pushed out, and then God would lead me to this experience, and that experience, and I learned this name, and this person, and I had this amazing experience. At the end of that year, I had led many of those young college people to Christ. I'd be in my room, and I'd have guys from down the hall in the dorm just come down and say, Brent, will you pray for me? See, that's what happens when you decide you're going to be that walk across the room type of Christian. And I'm going to tell you, when you decide to be that kind of Christian, the devil is nervous. See, the devil is nervous when you decide to get close to Jesus. That's where it all begins. He's okay with you coming to church once in a while. But when you decide you're going to dive in, and you're going to seek after God, and you're going to be diligent in your walk with God, and every day you're saying, God, fill me up with your Spirit. Use me today to touch somebody's life with your gospel, with Jesus. Let me give that gift away. Oh, you can imagine the enemy upset. As long as you keep it to yourself, he's okay with that. But he gets nervous and even angry when you decide you're going to get serious about giving that gift away. If you're a follower of Jesus, Jesus' Spirit is working on you. He's working on you to become a walk across the room type of follower of Jesus. That's what he's doing in your life right now. That's what he's doing. He wants you to walk across. He wants you to do it at work, at school, at social settings, at the gym, or even at the church. How many's ever been to church and you notice everybody's kind of in their little cliques? You ever seen that? And we all like to go to the people we know, we're comfortable with, and we hang out there. Try stepping out of yourself. Even in the church, be a walk across the room type of follower of Christ. I've wondered, people have come up to me so many times in my life of ministry. They ask me, man, my Christianity, I'm not growing. My Christianity is so blah. You know, I'm not growing. I don't know what to do. And I find out most of the time these people are not committed to being used of God. They're not committed to saying, I want to be used. And so, there they are in their comfort. They cling to their circle of comfort instead of being willing to take a risk for God and step across into that zone of the unknown. My favorite book, one of my favorite books in the world, is called Desire of Ages, page 825. It's the chapter on the Great Commission. This book is, and I want to say for some of you don't know this book, but it's considered the #1 book on the life of Christ and the Library of Congress, representing hundreds of books. It's a book, if you've never read Desire of Ages, take it, read it with the gospel, it will change your life. But notice what it says here, it is in doing Christ's work that the church has the promise of His presence. Go teach all nations, He said, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the end of the world. To take His yoke is one of the very conditions of receiving His power. The very life of the church depends upon her faithfulness in fulfilling the Lord's commission. To neglect this work is surely to invite spiritual feebleness and decay. Where there's no active labor for others, love wanes and faith grows dim. And I would say, amen, amen, and amen. It almost seems impossible that people that are friends with Jesus, that walk in His forgiveness and grace and mercy, would not want to give it away, but would become wrapped up and would become comfortable and would warm ourselves day after day, week after week, in the glow of Christian community. And so we stand inside our circles. All the while there's people around us that just need a little injection of God's love and His grace. What you and I know. And so it's almost like I'm saying, God, crank up the boldness meter in my life. Crank up being bold in my life. There was 2 things the early church prayed for. #1, they prayed for the Holy Spirit. #2, they prayed for boldness to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Try it every day. Boldness and the Holy Spirit. That's what they prayed for. That's why they changed the world. They gave away their greatest gift. So if you're serious about being a walk across the room type of follower of Jesus, be willing to step out of the zone or into the zone of the unknown. #2, listen for the Spirit's prompting. This is so important. Because the Spirit of God is anxiously looking to use people that are in love with Christ. He wants to use you with the people around you. And the Spirit of God will speak. And you get in tune with the Spirit. It's amazing what happens. He will begin to use you. And He'll put you places you never dreamed. And there'll be miracles that happen because the supernatural power of the Spirit is working in and through your life. Oh man, it's so amazing what it happens. And I'm telling you, when you look back in your life, you can see experience after experience when God's Spirit says, make the call. You ever had that? You get impressed, a name just pops in your head. That's God working on you to make the call, to make the text, to drive over, to make the connection. Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe it's a friend in need. Somebody that is hurting. God's Spirit will be working on you. And so I've seen this over and over again. And I can just go on and on. But we walk in the Spirit. We walk when the Spirit tells us to walk. But we don't walk when the Spirit tells us not to walk. This is what I love about walking with Christ. It is dynamic, it is mystical, it is out of control. And I love it because it keeps us on the edge. And it's an exciting adventure to know that every day God's Spirit wants to work through you somehow to touch a life. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. So God could have came with angels, could have preached the gospel. He didn't need you and me. But instead He uses people, undeserving people like us that don't deserve His grace, to share His gospel with people. And so you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. See, as the salt permeates and changes food, so God calls us to infiltrate our world and transform lives for Christ. And so salt, if you really look into salt, there's so much we could say about this salt. But it brings flavor. It brings spiritual potency. But think about it. If we don't get in proximity with people, if we don't rub shoulders with people, it doesn't matter how salty you are, you will never affect lives. They mess with young people. It says Christ's method, what? Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching people. The Savior did what? The Savior did what? Oh, he mingled. Thank you. I got somebody still awake. He mingled with people. He rubbed shoulders with people. Wow. He went where the sinners were. He mingled with the people that were lost, that were out there. He got close to people. Some might be saying, oh man, Brent, this isn't for me. This isn't my spiritual gift. Let the superstars do it. Let the outgoing people do it. The people with the right training, the right skill level, the right personality, the gifted people that way. Let them do it. That's not me. If you're in that camp, let me tell you, I can relate with that. But when God kind of wakes you up and you experience the gospel of Jesus, you can't stay silent. You just can't. When you're born again of the Spirit, He's going to push you out of your comfort zone, out of your circle of comfort. He's going to put you in that zone of the unknown. And the Spirit of God will use you. When I was called to ministry, I was scared to death. Go tell me to jump over a cliff, I would have. But the priest scared me to death. And then he told me to go call for it, knocking on doors all day. Scared me to death. And then he calls me to preach evangelistically. I did for 16 years. In front of thousands of people, scared me to death every night. But I tell you, that's what it's all about in this journey with God. It's scary at times. It is risky at times. And there is anxiety when you enter that zone of the unknown. But I tell you, that's where God does His best work. And the Spirit of God will whisper. And He will prompt you to step across those rooms. And you will. The Spirit of God will impress you. And then some powerful moment will happen. See, this is where God does His best work. He does His best work when He can use you to step across that room, make the walk for Christ. In Romans 5 verse 8, but God demonstrates His own love towards us in this. While we were sinners, Christ died for us. I was thinking about it just for a moment, that Jesus Christ, He actually stepped across the universe for us. While we were still sinners, He made that long walk across the universe. He loved you and me so much that He would walk across, and when the prophetic clock struck the hour, Jesus came to this world, and He walked across the entire universe and reached out His redemptive hand for you and me. We don't deserve it. But He did it for you, and He did it for me, and we're sitting here today because our Savior made the walk for you and me. He loved you that much. Amen. He gave His life for you. But more than that, He gave His life for the lost people out there that don't know Jesus, and yes, they are lost without Christ. And we have the privilege of being used by the God of heaven and earth, filled with the Spirit, commissioned by God to take the walks across the room. And so God says to us today, I'm going to ask you to walk across the street. I'm going to ask you to walk across the restaurant, or the office, or the cafeteria, the workout club, the locker room. I'm going to ask you to walk across and leave that circle of comfort. And so if you're going to be a walk across the room type of follower of Jesus, be willing to enter the zone of the unknown. Listen for the Spirit's prompting. But number 3, just walk, just do it. Just do it. Get in the habit of being in tune. and letting God move you and move you to those situations. I think about the woman at the well. In their society, Jesus wasn't just walking across a typical room. He was walking across gender and race and culture and man-made religions and restrictions. Jews hated Samaritans. This woman was a Jewish half-breed. She was considered unclean. But it didn't matter to Jesus because he took the walk to give hope and grace. And because of that walk, not only did she find salvation, but if you read the story, half the town found Jesus too. And I can imagine those disciples, there they are, they come back, they see Jesus talking to the woman. They say, what is he doing? What is wrong with Jesus? Doesn't he know better than to talk to this Jewish half-breed? What is he doing? And they did not understand. And so here's the disciples. They stay in their circle of comfort. Jesus steps out to the unknown. I want to follow Christ in my life. That's who I'm a follower of, by the way. I don't follow men, I don't follow church, I don't follow Adventist church. I follow Jesus, him and him alone. In my life. And Jesus has always been taking steps. You look at his life. He was stepping into the zone of the unknown. Always there, looking for people that he could share his love and the love of the Father with. And so the preacher tells a parable of ducks. He describes a town where only ducks live. Every Sabbath, the ducks waddled out of their houses and waddled down the main street to the church. They waddle into the sanctuary and squat in their proper pews. The duck choir waddles in and takes their place, and then the duck minister comes forward and opens the duck Bible. He reads to them, ducks, God has given you wings. With wings you can fly. With wings you can mount up and soar like eagles. No walls can confine you. No fences can hold you. You have wings. God has given you wings, and you can fly like birds. And all the ducks shouted, Amen! And they all waddled back to their homes. It's time to fly. If you don't get it, that's what it's all about. God is preparing people that will lighten the earth with His glory. They're so filled with God and His Spirit and His love and His grace and His mercy because they've been so transformed. They have to take the walks and risk into the zone of the unknown. You want to experience power? You want to experience more in your life? Take those steps. Now, I don't know if I should do this. I'm nervous. But I hope you guys trust me now. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to end with a story. And this story is so amazing, it's so powerful, and I've got it, it's going to move you. But it's a little iffy. Are you okay with an iffy story? I hope you can handle it. I'll try to be careful and all of that with the words, but I'm going to tell you a true story, but this to me is true life. If you get out there in the real world, away from our little isolated Adventism, this is the world that you will face when you're out there. So Pastor Gary tells a story. My morning office is the Waffle House. About 3 months ago, I went to the Waffle House. I sat down in a chair at the lower bar. The bar you can sit at, that is at the normal chair height. I did not notice the used coffee cup that was on the bar in the back next to the menu rack in front of the chair I sat in. It belonged to a man I will call Chuck, who happened to have gone outside to smoke the morning cigarette. Chuck is a man who comes frequently to the Waffle House. He is a rough and crude man in his late 50s. He cusses a lot and gives the waitresses and customers a hard time and is sharp with them when he's in a bad mood. Chuck walked back into the Waffle House, saw me sitting in his chair, and walked up to me and said coldly, "Hey, Mother Flaker, you are in my seat." I turned to him, and before I could say a word, two waitresses who were standing there almost jumped over the bar and verbally attacked Chuck. One says, "Now you listen here, you mother." Yeah. This here is a blanket man of God. And if you ever talk to him like that again, I will kick your blinking you know what. The other waitress jumped in. This is my blinking pastor. What the blink is wrong with you? Show some blinking respect. The waitress high-fived each other, and one said to the other, sword of the Spirit, a B word. And Chuck turned and walked out. I sat there and processed, remember this is the pastor, processed what had just happened. First, the waitresses had never come to a church gathering. Though I invited them many times, I never told the waitress I was their pastor. Because of my coming to the Waffle House 4 or 5 mornings a week and talking, listening, and praying with them, it appears that is how they saw me. The other day, the waitresses were talking about how life seemed to be attacking them. I took out my phone and read to them Ephesians 6 about the armor of God and explained it to them. And the one waitress shouting, sword of the Spirit, the B word, shows that they were listening and retaining what I had told them. I just need to work a little more on their application of that verse. Fast forward, a month ago, I was walking in the Waffle House and Chuck was outside in front smoking. I said good morning to him, and I was walking by and Chuck kind of quietly and nicely, especially for Chuck, asked if I had a moment. I told him sure and stopped by him. He said quietly as he looked at the ground, I know you're kind of a religious guy, and it's not that big of a deal, but I was wondering if you would pray for me sometime. I said, sure, what's up? And he went on to say that the doctors think he may have prostate cancer, and he had a test today confirming it. I said, of course. But before I could say anything else, he opened up and told me a story in about 10 minutes. A short story of what it was to be. He used to go to church a long time ago and was kind of close to God. Then he was drafted to Vietnam to fight in the war. He said he did things there that he was not proud of, things God could not forgive him for. He said he attacked villages, he shot and killed enemy soldiers who were just kids, also women and elderly. He saw children killed and witnessed and participated in the atrocities of war. He stopped praying after the war and was never gone back to church since he came back to the States. When I asked to pray with him, he said no. He had to leave, but for me to pray as he'd feel God would listen. As he walked away, my heart both mourned for him and was convicted for him. I had joined in with others at the Waffle House at times commenting on Chuck and his behavior. However, the reason Chuck was an angry and hurtful man is he was filled with guilt that separated from God. Guilt from the things he did he thought God would not forgive. And I thought, I know and preach that God can forgive anything. I have never put him to the test of his forgiveness like Chuck has to. If I had been one looking down at M16 and watching bullets splatter bodies, kids, and women with a gun and trigger I was pulling, the events might have made me even a bigger, hateful, guilt-filled man than Chuck. It reminded me that people are never the enemy. Fast forward to yesterday morning. I was in the Waffle House at a bar talking with customers and the waitress. Then Chuck walked in. He walked over the sidebar. He never sits by himself and sat down. No cussing, no loud comments to people as he came to the restaurant. He looked devastated. One of the waitresses says they heard his son had died the previous night. My spirit told me to go and sit in a chair next to him, and I did. I said good morning to him, and he said hey, and his eyes were filled with tears. I told him I had heard that his son had died, and if it is true, I'm so sorry. We talked again for 20 minutes, summary. He told me his son was 31 years old, and some of his friends, Chuck and Chuck's wife and his son's mother, were out on the front porch talking. His son told his friend how he bought a new pistol. They asked to see it. He went into the truck and got it, removed the clip, thought the gun was empty. It was not. He came back to the porch and handing the gun to his friend, but somehow went off and the bullet hit his son in the head 2 feet away. They rushed him to the hospital, but he died a few hours after the arrival. Chuck said he and his wife witnessed it. He could not get the sight out of his mind. It reminded him of the war. He had come home from the hospital and cleaned his son's blood and hair and other body parts to the side of his house and porch. Tears of feeling streaming down his face. He asked me if this was God's punishment for kids he killed in Vietnam. I said, of course not. And we walked and we talked a while. His son had a wife and 2 kids, 8 and 10 years old. After we finished, I went home, and my wife and I took the chicken I had grilled for dinner, along with sides of bread and dessert, and put it in the box and took it to the Waffle House. I also wrote a note to the family stating I was praying for them and asking to let me know if I could help in any way with my phone number on it, and put it in the box as well. I pulled into the Waffle House just in time as Chuck was walking to his car to leave. I parked, got the box, and gave it to him. Chuck, tears up again, and he took it. He says, I didn't have to, but I insisted, told him I was praying for him, and I left. Fast forward to today, I received a call today from Chuck. He thanked me for the food. He then said he and his family do not have any money. They're getting the cheapest cremation they can, and just going to do a remembrance service at their home. Their family does not attend church. They do not know many church people, let alone preachers. And he asked if I'd be willing to come to their house and share the Bible and some words over their son and their family. I told him I would be honored. I have been going to the Waffle House regularly for over 3 years now. Sometimes I wonder if I needed to continue going. Only 1 or 2 people, employees, or customers have ever entered the church by church gatherings. So if you do by traditional church metrics, my time investment has not led to church growth or increased numbers in the pews. It has not resulted in one penny going into our offertory plate or pastor support. Yet God reminds me of my prayer. And I say to him every morning, God, please send today to the ones who need you. No one wanted Chuck. Even I found it hard to be around him. But God, through just being faithful, has given me an amazing opportunity to be welcomed into his house. A circle of family, of friends that no other pastor has ever been invited to, and share the love of God with them. And that is my heart's desire. Not to see them as an evangelistic prospect, but a family in pain that needs the love of God, to love them. And I pray to honor God. Because that's a story. What I call walking across the road. And if they're around you all the time, people are divorcing all the time. People are dying in big organ all the time. People are drugs and so on all the time. It's happening right around you all the time. And if you put up your antennas, God will prompt you. He will move you. And God will use you. I don't know about you, but the greatest privilege is to take a step for God and walk across the road. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you that you have changed my life. Thank you for the gospel for me personally. Thank you for having mercy on an undeserving sinner like me. And thank you for the privilege, Lord, that you use people like us to share your gospel, your good news, with a world that's lost and dying. Oh, Father, help us to know what that means. Just step out for you into that zone of the unknown. What that means to be prompted by the Spirit. To just walk. God, use us. In Jesus' name.
I think it must be out of batteries. Just yell.
I really enjoy yelling. I had a field trip yesterday with school. I got to use my yelling voice, so it's practice. Just a reminder that the cards for the student aid mentioned that are out there. When you have a 6-minute social, for some of those who are new, this is an opportunity